Okay, what's up, everybody? I am Bucky Badger W, and today I have, a new live stream, which is going to be my top one or my top 50 NBA players tier list. Well, basically, I'm just going to be putting all the players on this tier maker. You know, we got, I think it's 50 players here. We're going to be putting them into different tiers. Potentially ranking them, just see what I think about these players. Um, I think it's gonna be a fun list. It's gonna be a fun video. But so yeah, without further ado, let's just get into it because we got all these players that we got to rank. By the way, this list is it's not by I didn't make this list. It's by I don't know. It's by somebody else. But I didn't make it. So know, if like the players on this list, like obviously I'm going to be ranking the players, but the specific 50 players that are on this list are not my players, or I didn't decide who the players are going to be on this list. But without further ado, let's get into the first player. I think it's in alphabetical order by first name. It looks like, um, or maybe not, because you get Devin Booker ahead of Bradley Beal, or no, maybe it's by last name. I don't know what it is. Um, it seems like the higher names are higher, but so yeah, I got six tiers here. We're probably gonna end up changing them up along the video, but um, here let's just get started. Actually, here, give me a second. Um, give it. Yeah, I gotta promote the stream. Um, where is it? Okay. Uh, dang it. How did I? Hmm. Okay, I'm gonna like it. um, okay. Okay. Yeah. Hmm. So, okay, so now, yeah, now we're good. Um, yeah, so, yeah, let's get started with here. It looks like at number one, we got, or our first player, we got Anthony Davis. I'm going to put him in tier two because I think AD, sorry, the stream is a little bit behind, my actual camera on my browser. But yeah, so I think AD, he's a great player. We saw him be arguably the second best player in the NBA back in the bubble. I mean, he was great there. We know he's one of the best defenders, if not, he has an argument for being the best defender in the NBA over Giannis. Um, I would still put Giannis as the number one defender, but he definitely has an argument. He's a great he's probably the best lob catcher in a pick and roll and lob finisher. He's great as the roller in the pick and roll. One of the best, if not the best guys at that in the NBA. I mean, he's very versatile on offense. He can create for himself. He's a fine playmaker. He's definitely, a good shooter. We saw that in the bubble, especially from the mid range. Yeah, he can create for himself on defense. He's extremely versatile. He's a great rim protector. He's everything you can ever want on defense. He's got to stay healthy. That's why he's not in tier one. And really, I think last year was, I mean, this year he's coming off of an off year, definitely, um, in 2021, where he wasn't really himself, it looked like. And, maybe you can chalk that up to injuries, but at the same time, he's got to stay healthy. And if we can see a healthy, consistent AD, he'll move up into tier one in no time. Okay, Anthony Edwards next. Not really sure how these tiers are going to shake out, so I could end up moving him, but we're going to put him in tier six right now because he's young. I'm a Timberwolves fan, so I really like Anthony Edwards. Um, he's an extremely, athletic, strong, athlete, and he uses that to help him be a great scorer. He's a very good shooter as well. He's good at getting to his spots and knocking down jumpers. He's a great finisher. All of that. We saw his dunk over Yuta Watanabe last year. So Anthony Edwards is a great scorer. He's not the best defender, not the best playmaker at the moment, but that'll come. It's just he's still very raw as a player. We can't just act like that's not the case. He's very raw as a player. He's going to develop obviously and much better than this, but at the moment he's tier 6. DeAndre Ayton put in tier 5. He had a great playoffs, but I don't think he's not on the level of Bam Adebayo, even Clint Capella, obviously Joel Embiid, like some of the other top centers in the game right now. He's not a very good creator for himself right now on offense. I mean, he's a great defender. He's a great offensive rebounder and lob threat. If we see him be great again in year 2, then we're definitely gonna rank him a little bit higher here on this list. But as of now, I think tier 5 is probably a good spot for him. Especially since I think last year's playoffs it's probably not an outlier, but it's definitely the best we've seen him play yet. Um, we're gonna put Bam Adebayo. We're gonna put him in tier 4 at the moment. He can definitely move up. Bam is he is a great defensive player. Obviously, he's extremely versatile. One of the most versatile defenders in the NBA. He can guard guards. Switch on to those guys. Even just guard them straight up, not even switch on to them. Uh, he can create for himself a little bit. He's a great playmaker on offense. He's amazing in the pick and roll. So I think on offense, Bam is he's a very solid player. And then on defense, he's not the rim protector that guy like AD or Rudy Gobert is. But he's very versatile and he's very solid. He's an above average rim protector at least. So Bam, he's not a leader of a team, and he's definitely not on the tier that Anthony Davis is right now. So he's in tier 4, but he can definitely move up along this video. Ben Simmons, put Ben Simmons here ahead of DeAndre Ayton. Because Simmons, he had an awful playoffs. There's no way around that. And, he hasn't progressed since his rookie year. So all these like workout videos and like highlight videos during the off season that we're seeing of Ben Simmons, I'm gonna need to see it for real before we, like in the season, in the playoffs. I'm gonna need to see him doing that stuff because Ben Simmons, I mean, his ceiling, like he's still like in his like 4th, 5th, 6th year, something like that, and he can still be a good scorer because of his size and his ability to ball handle. He's we think he's a great playmaker, but he didn't. Last year in the playoffs, I think is definitely not what Ben Simmons is going forward. But then again, last year in the playoffs, I mean, it was just like he wasn't even a great defender last year in the playoffs. He's not a great off-ball defender. He's a great on-ball defender. But if that was the case, why wasn't he guarding Trae Young in the playoffs? Like, why weren't they putting him on Young? He was guarding like Bogdanovich against the Hawks, just like in the corner all game. He adds nothing to a team like that, and he's clearly seems like he's not willing to go in like the dunker spot on offense. So I don't really know with Simmons. I mean, it seemed like he was going to get traded this offseason. I think the Sixers would be better off trading him for something to some extent. But I don't know. I mean, he's not on the tier of player that Bam Adebayo is right now. And, I know that he's still young and he still has ways to improve. But so are a lot of these guys. He's in tier 5 right now. He may move up along the video. Devin Booker's probably in tier 4 with Bam. Once again, could move up. But Booker, I think this was probably his best year, 2021. He's a very good playmaker at this point in the pick and roll and just, making the connection pass. He's a very good playmaker. He's a solid defender because, he has good foot speed. He's very strong, which also makes him a very good offensive player. His ability to finish. He's one of the best ISO scorers in the game. His ability to hit the mid range, like I said, he's very strong. He's able to carve out his own space, and he's able to hit contested shots. So Devin Booker, to me, he's definitely a tier 4 guy. I think for him to get up into tier 3, we're going to need to see him, really become the engine of an offense. I mean, I think we're really just going to need to see him do it again for him to get into tier 3, because he's improved a lot over his career, but I don't think he's ever going to be a big plus as a defender. I don't know really how much better he can get as a playmaker. I mean, he needs to get more efficient as a scorer potentially, but he's already fine there. So, yeah, he could maybe move up along this video. Bradley Beal is a similar type player. He's not the playmaker. I mean, he's a big minus as a defender. He's not the playmaker Booker is, but he's a great off-ball player, able to run around screens and stuff, and he's a good shooter. As a scorer, he's the perfect athletic build, just like Jalen Green or Donovan Mitchell is, to be a scoring guard with his explosiveness, and he has great ball handling ability. He's able to hit tough shots. Bradley Beal's in tier 4 because he's really not a big plus in any area other than scoring. But as a scorer, he's top 5, top 10 in the league. He's around that, so he's in tier 4 right now. Malcolm Brogdon, put him in high tier 6. I think Brogdon, he's a solid scorer, solid defender. He's a pretty good playmaker, but he's not a huge difference maker, I think. So I'll put him in tier 6. Jimmy Butler, put Jimmy Butler in tier 3 because I don't think that he's on the level that Anthony Davis is, but he was great this regular season. He had a terrible postseason, but I'm sure he can bounce back from that. He's a very solid slasher as a scorer. He's a good playmaker, and just he's like with Booker, kind of. He's very strong in his ability to score. He's a very good playmaker. He's very good off ball on offense and being able to cut, get to the basket like that. On defense, obviously, he's great. Just really all around, he's a great defender. There isn't anything bad you can say about Jimmy Butler on defense. I mean, he's not the engine of your offense, which is why he's not, in tier 2, and he's not. The difference between him and AD is that AD is basically the same caliber of offensive player, but then AD, just with the role that he plays on defense, he by default adds more value on defense. Because he can deter the easiest shots at the rim. Jimmy Butler as a perimeter defender can't really do that to the same extent. So tier 3, I think, is a solid spot for Jimmy. CJ McCollum we'll put in tier 5 here, and Bam, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, because he's a scorer like those guys, and he's a solid playmaker, but he's not on the level of those guys like Beal and Booker are. Clint Capella, put him in high tier 5, because I think he's definitely better than DeAndre Ayton. He's like DeAndre Ayton, but better. I mean, he's a great defender. He's a top 3, top 5 shot blocker in the game right now with his length, with his anticipation, his verticality. He's amazing in that regard. He's not anything on offense other than a rim runner, but that's fine because he's a great defender. So yeah, I think he's a high tier 5 guy. John Collins is, for now, we'll put him in low tier 5 because he's, on offense, I think he's one of the best off-ball players on offense because of his cutting, because he's maybe one of the best lob catchers already of all time, and he's able to flush those home like we saw against Joel Embiid. That's great in the pick and roll with Trae Young. He's a solid shooter. On defense, he's great. I don't think he's the player that Clint Capella is quite, because he doesn't have quite the same defensive impact that Capella does. But I mean, they're actually pretty close, I would say. and you can, I don't know if the tiers or if the players in the tiers are in order, but yeah, he's in there. Um, Chris Paul, CP3, high tier 4. He's not the same type of impact that Jimmy Butler is. Um, he's not the he's not the defender that Jimmy Butler is. I mean, he's still a plus on defense. He's not a huge plus though. Um, he's a very he's a very he's a solid scorer and he's still an elite playmaker. He's great in the pick and roll, but he's definitely not the player he once was. And we saw in the playoffs, even though he wasn't bad by any means in the playoffs, we still saw the like CP3. He's not able to beat teams by himself on offense, which is what a guy like Booker or Beal can do. Now they don't have like the playmaking ability that CP3 has, but they're still in tier 4. Damian Lillard, I'll put in tier 2. He's one of the best scorers in the game, obviously, one of the best shooters of all time. He's a lead in the pick and roll. He's a terrible defender, but on offense, he's one of the best players in the NBA. I'm going to want to see what he does. I think if he gets traded to the 76ers, I was kind of looking at those types of trades today on Fanspo, which is, I think, the new TradeNBA.com. I was looking at those trades today, and he is. I think I would really be excited for a Damian Lillard, Joel Embiid pairing in Philly. I think that'd be something to look out for because the Damian Lillard, Joel Embiid pick and roll. I mean, we'll get to Embiid here, but the Damian Lillard, Joel Embiid pick and roll would be so fun. I mean, Dame shooting, him passing that ball to Embiid off the pick and roll. I mean, they're both. That'd be so exciting to watch. I just hope that they can get it done because they would be one of the front runners in the NBA. I think if they were able to pull that off, if they were able to trade Lillard for a package like Ben Simmons, Tyrese Maxey, and like 3 first-round picks or something. I don't know if that's what it's going to take, but whatever it takes, they should try to bring in Damian Lillard because Damian Lillard in Philly would, I think, instantly turn them into a contender, even in the East with teams like Milwaukee, the Brooklyn, Miami. Obviously, they're maybe already ahead of Miami, but it put them in the Milwaukee and Brooklyn tier. But anyway, that's a long way of saying Damian Lillard, his offensive ability makes him tier 2. DeMar DeRozan, put him high tier 6. He's a negative on defense. He's not. I mean, he's a good playmaker. He's a good finisher. He's a solid scorer. I think he's going to be okay on the Bulls this year. I think the Bulls are a bit overrated this year. I don't think they're definitely not in the tier for me of like the Heat, the 76ers, the Bucks, the Nets in the Eastern Conference. But yeah, so DeRozan, I think he's the type of guy that I think he's in that tier 6. He's among the Brogdons, and maybe Anthony Edwards should be a tier lower. I don't know. I may have to move Edwards a tier down, even though I love Ant. D'Angelo Russell. D'Angelo Russell can be very high tier 6. I may move him up. He is very, very big negative on defense, but on offense, he's still a very good scorer. He's a great playmaker. D'Lo, Edwards, and Cat, and now Patrick Beverley that we traded for Patrick Beverley. I'm confident that can lead the Wolves to a play-in appearance this year. I mean, potentially, hopefully. Don't get your hopes up, Wolves fans. I am one of you, but don't get your hopes up. But D'Lo, I mean, that trio on offense at least is elite. But D'Lo's in tier 6. Luka, he's in tier 2. I mean, there isn't really much that. I think Luka next year he can definitely vault himself up into tier 1 because he's an elite playmaker. He's one of the best, if not the best playmaker in the NBA. He's an outstanding passer, maybe the best passer in the NBA. His scoring is elite. He's a great 3-point shooter. It's weird because he's not ridiculously like explosive or anything, but still like his ability to, I mean, his ball handling ability, and then he's able to use that to break down defenses, and he's so smart with his ability to get to his spots. He can hit any shot in the book. I mean, he's elite in the pick and roll, maybe the best guy at the pick and roll in the NBA. I mean, I don't know, but he's up there. Um, yeah, I mean, just look, and then he's not even a minus on defense. I think he's a pretty much a neutral on defense, to me at least, because he's a solid defender due to his strength, even though he can't guard like quicker guys. But yeah, Luka's one of the best offensive players in the league. He'll at some point in his career he'll be the best player in the league, um, and he's in tier two, probably actually above Anthony Davis. Um, okay, Joel Embiid here in tier two. He's Anthony Davis, but a little bit worse. On defense, he's very switchable for a guy that he's so light on his feet for a guy his size, and his size obviously allows him to be a great rim protector. Joel, and then on offense, he's a solid playmaker. He's a very good rebounder. He's good off ball. He's a very good scorer. In ISO situations, in post ups, he's one of the best, if not the best, in the NBA. He's really just Anthony Davis, but a little bit worse, even with the injury concerns. I mean, they're pretty much two of the same, Anthony Davis and Joel Embiid. Just I slightly prefer Anthony Davis right now, but they're both in tier two. De'Aaron Fox, very underrated. He's at the top of tier five here. I keep seeing stuff. I keep seeing stuff about De'Aaron Fox being underrated, like on Twitter and stuff. I think that's going to happen enough to the point where he's going to be properly rated, because Fox, he's the fastest player in the league, probably. I will admit I don't watch a ton of Kings, so I don't, I assume his defense, from reputation, that's not great. But on offense, he's definitely he's a very good scorer due to his speed, and his ability to, knock down shots to some extent. He's a very good playmaker. So De'Aaron Fox, at the very top of tier 5, depending on what happens with these guys in tier 4, he can maybe move up. Fred VanVleet, he's in tier 4, tier 6. I think VanVleet, I used to be a lot higher on him than this, but I don't know about Fred VanVleet anymore. He's definitely not the engine to your offense. He's really just, his best role on offense is definitely just a shooter off the ball, and he's a solid defender, but as a perimeter defender, you can't really make too much of an impact. So Fred VanVleet, tier 6. Giannis is tier 1. Oh, no, Giannis is tier 1 easily. He has an argument. A lot of people say it's just Curry is the best player in the NBA. I think Giannis definitely has an argument for the best player in the NBA, because in my opinion, he's the best defender in the NBA. He has elite timing on defense. He has an elite wingspan and great athleticism. He's able to contest shots. He's able to guard guards on the perimeter. He's, like we saw in the NBA Finals, he's an elite rim protector. There's nothing that Giannis can't do on defense, and he's so rangy. It's like, you can be like 2 steps from the basket, and Giannis is at like half court, and he's still going to block you. Giannis, I think, is the best player in the NBA, slightly ahead of Anthony Davis. He's on offense then. He's a very good playmaker, great offensive rebounder. We saw this year, instead of just constantly trying to drive into a fleet of like, a wall of 5 guys awaiting him in the paint. Instead, this year he was more patient. He was more willing to go in the pick and roll. And when he tries to get to the basket and when he's like one-on-one, he's unstoppable, because he's the best finisher, arguably, of all time. He's too strong, too long. He's too good a ball handler, too big for anybody in the NBA to consistently guard. And that makes him tier one and gives him an argument for the best player in the world after just winning the NBA championship. Um, Rudy Gobert we'll put in tier four, put right here, because I think on offense he's a plus, even though many people don't think so. He's like Clint Capella kind of on offense, but a little bit better. Um, I mean, he really just has his value as a offensive rebounder, and then lob threat in the pick and roll, but that's fine. And then on defense, he's probably the best regular season defender in the NBA. He's definitely the best rim protector, at least in the regular season in the NBA. He just He deters shots at such an elite level that in the regular season he holds so much value. I need to see more from him in the playoffs. I need to see him, especially on defense. I need to see him not be a negative. Like when your whole game basically is on defense, and you're a negative in a playoff series, in that playoff series against the Clippers, at some points he was a negative. You can't be higher than tier four here, because that's just, he has to be better next year, and they have to figure out a way to, say he can't be just a negative, like sitting in the paint all game. And then even in like at some points in that Clippers series, like Reggie Jackson would just be driving to the basket. I know the hoop venue, KG's Goat on Twitter talks a lot about this. The Jazz didn't have good point of attack defenders at all, but still, like Reggie Jackson was like getting to the basket at will, and they're just like making contested layups against Gobert look easy. Like, Gobert has to be better against that, which is why he's in tier four. Jeremy Grant, tier five. High tier six. Versatile defender, good offensive player, especially off ball, but he's not great. We'll see what he can do with Cade Cunningham this year. He's in tier six. James Harden, tier two, a little bit better than Luka right now. Playmaking, defense goes to Harden probably in that Harden-Luka debate, even though it's very close. Neither are big plus defenders, neither are big minus defenders either. I think they're both pretty much neutral, though I think Harden's a slight plus. Harden's a better scorer than Luka, even though he didn't really show it this year. He was more efficient this year, and we saw that Harden, when he was with KD and he didn't just have to score like 50 points every game to keep his team in the game, we saw that he could 100%, still be an efficient scorer, still be a good scorer, and we shouldn't penalize him too much for those 3 games he played against Milwaukee because he was hurt in those games, and pretty sure like he pulled his hamstring or something. So that's a hard injury to deal with. At this point, his playmaking is actually better than his scoring. His playmaking isn't quite on the tier that Luka's is, but I think his defense is a little bit better. His scoring is better. Luka's got the playmaking advantage, but Harden's better here. He's in tier 2. I think if Kyrie, and KD stay healthy, there's no reason that the Brooklyn Nets shouldn't win the NBA championship this year. Gordon Hayward, tier 6. We haven't seen. He's a good off-ball player on offense, but we haven't seen Hayward play in a while, or no, especially we haven't seen him play at an elite level in a while. Brandon Ingram is tier 4. Ingram is, he's a very good scorer, not a great defender, but solid playmaker. He's KD. He's a starving man's Kevin Durant. With his mid-range game, with his ability to shoot it, with KD's kind of body type. Not comparing him to KD. I kind of am comparing him to KD, but I'm not saying he's the tier of player that KD is in the slightest. We'll see that when I rank KD, but he's a very underrated, very good player. Put him right behind Fox here. Kyrie's tier 3, probably ahead of Jimmy. And when you think of Kyrie, it's like, and even the Kyrie and Dame debate, I agree it's Damian Lillard, but Kyrie Irving, he's a better defender than Dame. I think he's a neutral on defense, which is a big upgrade over what Dame is on defense, because Dame is not a good defender at all. He's a neutral on defense because he gives a lot of effort on the defensive end. If you watch him, He's a good playmaker. And then in isolation situations, like his ball handling, his shot is so good. He's so hard to guard. And I think Kyrie, just his ability to get to whatever spot he wants and knock down the shot. I mean, he's probably like he's a better scorer than Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell, like guys that base their game off of scoring. He's a better scorer than those guys. He's a better playmaker than they are. He's a better defender. I mean, Kyrie, I think, has started to kind of become an underrated player to some extent because the Nets traded for James Harden, and now he's not even the best guard on his own team, and he's the third best player on his own team. But he's still a borderline top 10 player in the NBA. He's still a great player, man, and he's still so fun to watch. I think we see a healthy Kyrie this year. He's going to be going off. Kyrie, tier 3. Ja Morant, tier 5. Worse than Fox, but better than Ben Simmons. Ja's definitely still growing as a player. Teams can kind of do the same thing that they do to Ben Simmons against him. Just will him to shoot. And with Ja, he will shoot and make it some of the time, but he's not a knockdown shooter by any means. He's a great playmaker, and like we saw in the pick and roll, he's very lethal. But he has to round out his game. But I mean, I have no doubts that he's doing that. And he's definitely improving, and he will be a lot higher at some point. Jaylen Brown, also tier 5. He's a very good athlete. I mean, he's a good shooter, very good off-ball player, good defender. He's just not, he can't run an offense by himself like we've seen. It seems like without Tatum, the Celtics really don't have a shot. And the Celtics, other than Tatum and Brown, are a terrible team. So that's part of it. But I think Jaylen Brown, he's hopeful this year to be on the same level as De'Aaron Fox. And he was a lot improved last year. So I think and he's still very young, so we can see him improve to that kind of tier. But at this point, he's at tier 5 for me. Jokic he's at tier 2. I slot him in right there, behind Luka, ahead of AD, because Jokic, defensively, as a center, he's a neutral to a slight negative, but probably more of a neutral. And then on offense, I think a lot of people would argue that he's the best playmaker in the league. I think that title goes to Doncic. But Jokic, I mean, he's still a great playmaker. I kind of, once again, KG's GOAT, talking on Twitter, I think he said, with Karl Anthony Towns, like his gravity is more valuable than Steph Curry's gravity, and that sounds crazy, but I mean it's kind of Nikola Jokic's gravity isn't more than Steph Curry's, but it's kind of the same idea, where I think his ability to shoot the three and pulling out like a rim protector like Rudy Gobert from the basket is very valuable. And then also, I mean, with the ball in his hands, he's elite. He's a great scorer. He's a great mid-range shooter. His post moves are amazing. He's able to score basically at will. I mean, we saw in the Blazers series, like, when they gave the ball to Jokic and he tried to score, he was scoring the ball. And then he's also maybe the best passer in the league. I mean, his passing for a big man, he's the best passing big man of all time by a wide margin already. I mean, it's just unreal. Like, he'd just catch the ball in the post and then just, no look, over the shoulder to a player that nobody saw cutting. I mean, it's just unreal what Jokic was able to do. That's why he was the MVP last year. If he repeats that kind of performance, he'll have an argument for the best player in the world. I mean, that's how good he was last year. And I think by the end of next year, we will probably be talking about him as tier 1 because, I mean, on offense, there's nothing he can't do. Like, he's a great scorer, great passer, great rebounder. He's very good off ball because of his gravity, his scoring gravity, his shooting gravity, all of that. It's just defensively, and he isn't even bad defensively because of his good defensive awareness. It's just teams constantly put him in the pick and roll. That's what we saw against the Blazers with Damian Lillard. We saw them put Jokic in the pick and roll all day. that was a big problem for him. But you know, that's you'll take the good with the bad with Jokic because he is a generational player. I don't think we've ever seen a player quite like Nikola Jokic. Jonas Valanciunas, tier 5. I mean, he doesn't wow me really. He's I think a lot of other people think he's better than like Clint Capella, DeAndre Ayton. I don't think so. Um, I think he's just he's a good center. He's a good. I mean, he's a solid shooter, but he's not great. He's good defensively. He's a good offensive rebounder, good in the pick and roll. Doesn't jump out at me as a great player. Oh, I mean, this year actually, I've said he's on the Grizzlies. He's going to be on the New Orleans Pelicans this year, which is going to be interesting to see how he pairs with Ingram and Zion Williamson, who we'll get to later. Um, but yeah, so yeah, Jonas Valanciunas tier 5. Um, Drew Holiday, Drew tier 5. Same. We got a lot of guys in tier 5 here. Um, I'll put him here. So I think we saw in the playoffs, Drew is definitely not a good scorer. I mean, he's an elite defender, especially on the ball. I mean, he's great. Like he's a pest, which is a good thing on defense. He's just always in the offensive player's business, you know, and he's always deterring them from doing what they want to do, which is as a perimeter defending guard, that's your entire goal on defense. And Drew Holiday is great at that. He's also a solid guy in the pick and roll. He's a bad shooter, at least what we saw in the playoffs. I mean, he's an okay shooter, but offensively, he's definitely not the type of guy that John Morant, McCollum here, another guard, D'Angelo Russell, De'Aaron Fox, even Malcolm Brogdon. He's better than Malcolm Brogdon, I think, offensively, but his defensive value definitely puts him into being tier 5, although he's definitely not on the level of Beal, Booker, those type of guys. Kawhi Leonard, tier 1. Not better than Giannis at this point, but I mean his defense is kind of overrated at this point. Where I mean he used to be one of the best defenders of all time, even not as a big man. Um, and because I mean, like his perimeter defense was arguably the best of all time in his prime, just because his lateral quickness was all time great. His strength was all time great. His ability to reach and get steals, all time great. Uh, I mean, he just you saw with LeBron James in the NBA Finals, he's he was generational at getting players and getting offensive players on the perimeter to not do what they wanted to do. And so Kawhi, he's not that type of player anymore on defense. He's still great on defense, especially when he's locked in. But like injuries have limited him in terms of lateral quickness to the point where he's not there. He's not the type of defender he once was. But Kawhi on offense now, he's an elite playmaker. He's an elite shooter, especially from the mid range. He's a very good shot creator. He's second best mid range shooter in the league, behind Kevin Durant. Um, no, just offensively, he's one of the best volume scorers in the league. Like he scores some of the most in the league, and he does it ridiculously efficiently. So Kawhi to me is a clear tier 1 type of guy. I mean, it sucks that he's going to have the injury next year because he would be vying for the best player in the NBA. But hopefully we see him at the same level next year come playoff time because he's such a fun player to watch, and I love Kawhi Leonard mostly because of his weird kind of personality. But anyway, yeah, Kawhi tier 1, Kevin Durant, move him up into tier 1. Durant is the second best scorer in the NBA in my opinion, behind Steph Curry. He's a great playmaker. On offense he's unstoppable. You like in an ISO situation when he's hot, which is pretty much all the time, he cannot be stopped. I mean, here, give me a second. Okay, yeah. So yeah, on offense, in an isolation situation, he cannot be stopped. He's the best player in the world in ISO, probably. He's the best mid-range shooter. There's nobody, like, he's 7 feet tall. He releases the ball super high. There's nobody that can block his mid-range shot. He gets to his spots at will. For Kevin Durant, there really isn't a offensive weakness in his game, I think. It's just defensively, he's not the player that some of the other, he's definitely not the player that Giannis is, even though he's definitely not a negative on defense. I think he's a neutral. But this year, I mean, once again, if he, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving are healthy, then that should win the NBA Finals. There's no reason they shouldn't, because those are three of the, top 5, top 10 scorers in the league easily. So, I mean, and three of definitely the top 10 offensive players in the league. So, I mean, there's no way to stop them. Kevin Durant, we know what Kevin Durant is. He's tier 1. Kemba Walker's tier 6. Yeah, Kemba Walker this year was just yuck, especially in the postseason. I mean, he's just not a good defender. He was an inefficient scorer this year. He's a good playmaker, but I mean, if he returns to prime Kemba this year with the Knicks, maybe we'll see something else, and I'll be singing a different tune. But I don't know. I wouldn't count on it. Yeah, yeah, I would not count on him getting back to prime Kemba this year because he doesn't look like he has the same like shiftiness that he once does. He doesn't look like the same guy. LaMelo Ball, he's also in tier 6. He's not a great scorer at this point. I mean, he's not a great defender, not a great scorer. He's a very good playmaker, and he's going to develop into being a lot better at those things. But just at this point in his career, he's coming off of his rookie season. He's tier 6 is tier 6 is pretty good for just coming off of your rookie season. So no disrespect intended there to LaMelo Ball. LeBron is definitely tier 1, even though I think he's the worst out of those 4 players. LeBron's still the king. I mean, he's still defensively, he's very good. Offensively, he's a very good scorer, even though, like in 2018, like LeBron was just, anytime he wanted, he would get downhill and he would score against anyone he wanted. He's not doing the same thing this year. At this point in his career, it looks like the athleticism has, to some extent, worn off. He's not the same, he's not able to do the things he once was. He's still elite as a playmaker, though. He's a top 5 playmaker in the league. And I think next year when we see fully healthy LeBron, I don't think he's going to be the best player in the league, but he's going to be a very, very effective player. And one of the best players in the league. Probably you'd expect him to lead the Lakers to the NBA Finals. Karis LeVert, tier 6. I mean, I don't know. I didn't hear much from Karis LeVert, to be honest, last year, even though, he was on my fantasy team and he was not good, but he's a solid offensive player, good defensive player, solid scorer, but not really much to be said about Karis LeVert. Kyle Lowry, he's tier 5, and Lowry is, not a ton has changed from, a couple of years ago in Toronto, but I think for some reason people think he's fallen off of a cliff. But Lowry, is a very efficient and good scorer. He's a great shooter, great playmaker, great defender. He doesn't have one overarchingly great quality, I think, but he's still a very, very good player, and him on the Heat this year should be electric. Chris Middleton, he'll go tier 4. Put him right there. I put him ahead of Devin Booker because he's a much better defender than Devin Booker. He's a big plus on defense. And then he has a good playmaking ability. And he has a great scoring ability, mostly because of his ability to hit contested shots, which we saw in the playoffs last year. When the Bucks really needed a bucket and maybe the lane was clogged for Giannis to try and get downhill. Chris Middleton one-on-one was constantly able to pour in points. And Middleton is a great player. I don't, if he didn't have Giannis, I don't know what the Bucks would have done last year, but Middleton's still one of the best, second best players in the NBA easily at this point. Um, Mike Conley is also tier 5, I think. I think he is like a tier ahead of like D'Angelo Russell. He's maybe not quite on the level of like John Morant is. But Conley, kind of like Kyle Lowry, there isn't really an overarchingly great quality about him. But especially when when he's on that Jazz team with Donovan Mitchell as a creator, and then he's got shooters all around in Mitchell, Clarkson, Ingles, Bogdanovich, Royce O'Neal to some extent. Now they brought in Rudy Gay. Jared Butler was the steal of the draft, probably. So yeah, he's gonna be very good once again this year in Utah. Donovan Mitchell is the best player in Tier 4. I think he's better than Devin Booker because he's a much better playmaker. Like Donovan Mitchell is a top 10 probably playmaker in the league. He has an elite ability to like find, the Jazz have all these elite three-point shooters. He has an elite ability to find them, and obviously they knock down open shots, especially out of the pick and roll. But just really in anything, Mitchell's able to find open shooters and they're able to knock down shots. His first step is elite. He's a great shooter. He's an elite athlete, very good ball handler. As a scorer, Donovan Mitchell is among the best in the league. Defensively, he's not good, but offensively, he's definitely in Tier 4. And I think next year he's going to move up a tier for me. I'm definitely high on Mitchell. Michael Porter Jr. is in Tier 5. I think he's like to some extent his height is wasted on him because he's not a very good defender. And then really the best quality about him is his shooting ability. Like so far he hasn't been able to unlock any like ISO scoring ability that like Brandon Ingram or Kevin Durant have that are that height. But I think this was just his second full year as a player, so he can definitely develop into better, especially now that he has his sidekick along with him, Jamal Murray, who, yeah, Jamal Murray's like right on the fringe because what we saw from Jamal Murray last year in the playoffs, if we were just going off that, he's probably like Tier 1, but I'll put him in Tier 5 because this year wasn't spectacular from him. I think he can still be the elite scorer that we saw in the bubble. He's not a very good defender, but he can still be an elite scorer like we saw in the bubble. A great playmaker. I don't know if he'll ever like return to what he did in the bubble because what he did in the bubble was absolute insanity. He was one of the top 5 players in the NBA if we just take that sample size. Like that bubble year was better than like that. If you extrapolate that bubble to this season, he'd probably be the best player in the NBA, just in my rankings. But I'll put him in Tier 5 for now because we need to see a little more consistency. Okay, we keep chugging along with a lot more players to go. I am speeding it up, but Victor Oladipo, Tier 6, seems like he's fallen off a cliff. We'll see if he can get it back I think he's back with Miami this year. I think he just re-signed like a $3 million extension, which is a big L because he turned down like $30 million from the Rockets or something. But yeah, Oladipo, at his peak, he was a very good defender, very good scorer, playmaker, all of that. See if he can return to that. Paul George is Tier 3. Yeah, Paul George is Tier 3. He's not like... he's a very good offensive player like we saw. He's probably best... He's best suited in a situation where he can be the primary ball handler. And, he said like last year, or in the bubble, the Clippers had, like with Ty Lue, not with Ty Lue, with Doc Rivers, they just had him like running off of screens and stuff and try and catch and shoot stuff, which he can catch and shoot, but he's definitely better as a ball handler or a primary ball handler because his ball handling is elite. I mean, it's some of the best we've ever seen for a guy his height. Um, he's got that. He's a great shooter, solid finisher. His combo moves as a dribbler are immaculate. Um, and I think he's also a very good defender, top, arguably top 20, top 25 in the league as a defender. But yeah, he's in tier three with these guys. I think that's a good spot for him. Okay, we got next Porzingis, tier six. He just doesn't utilize his height at all. He stands in the corner and shoots threes all day. His potential is through the roof, but we've been saying that for a while. I mean, it's time to put up or shut up for Porzingis. If I were the Mavs, I would definitely not be trying to hold on to him for any means. He wasn't the best. He wasn't the second best player on the Mavs last year in the playoffs. Like Tim Hardaway Jr. was better. Jalen Brunson was better. Like he's got to have a bounce back year this year. He has to. Julius Randle. Oh wait, where's my? Okay, there it is. Okay, Julius Randle. Put in tier 5. Yeah, definitely tier 5. Low tier 5 because he had a brutal playoffs. There is something to be said for this year potentially just being a fluke. We don't know for sure, but it is definitely possible that this year was just a fluke because Julius Randle was not good at all this year in the playoffs. I mean, he was great in the regular season. Like, he was a good defender, good playmaker, and he was not just a volume scorer, but an efficient scorer, something we hadn't seen in a while from Julius Randle, or we hadn't seen at all from Julius Randle. But yeah, so I think I'll drop him in tier 5. Like Jamal, if you're gonna talk about like he peaked great last year, like Jamal Murray in the last 2 years is at a better peak. De'Aaron Fox, Brandon Ingram, Drew Holiday, like all of these guys have even peaked higher than him. They've had better consistency. Like I think there's a chance next year that we're talking about Julius Randle and he's off this list. Okay, RJ Barrett. I mean, Knicks fans are going to want me to put him in tier 5, but he's like nowhere near the level of Mike Conley, Michael Porter Jr. Like he's not a great defender. Playmaking is okay. And then like against Atlanta, who was a bad defensive team last year, he wasn't able to do much of anything. Like neither of those Knicks guys were. So I can't rank them very highly at all. He goes in tier 6. Which that tier 6 is probably jumbled up. Like he's not better than I'd say Victor Oladipo is probably better at this point. DeMar DeRozan's definitely better than a lot of these guys. But yeah, so okay, next we got Terry Rozier. Let's put him in tier 6. I think he's probably at this point the best player on the Hornets. LaMelo will end the season as the best player on the Hornets. Terry Rozier, despite not being a great defender, he's a very good and very sort of exciting scorer. He's able to slam over people. The Hornets announcer screaming in the color commentator's ear, Terry, oh my goodness. But yeah, I mean Rozier, he's a good playmaker. He's a very good point guard at this point, and it's weird that the Celtics, they held on to. I think they did like a sign and trade for Kemba and Terry Rozier, and they paid Kemba like way more because at that point Kemba was supposed to be like way better than Terry Rozier. At this point, Terry Rozier is a better player. So that's interesting to me. The Celtics haven't done anything right in a long time. Well, the roster's crumbling around them. Domantas Sabonis. He's He's in tier 4. Oh yeah, he's not in tier 4. He's a tier 5 guy. I like Sabonis. He's definitely not on the tier of guys in tier 4 like Booker and Beal. But yeah, I like Sabonis. Like his playmaking ability. He's not a good defender, but his playmaking ability, his post moves are a sight to see. For a guy that watches Wisconsin basketball, so I definitely appreciate post moves. So yeah, he's going to be in tier 5. But he's definitely not ahead of Fox and company there. Sexton, Sexton's in tier 6. Keep in mind, the guys in tier 5, like at the bottom of tier 5, are like Michael Porter Jr., John Morant. Like Colin Sexton isn't on the level of those guys. He's exciting to see at points with his defense and like shooting ability, and he was very exciting to watch at Alabama. But he may be getting traded this offseason. I mean, he's still young, so we're going to see Colin Sexton continue to develop. But we'll see if he ends up getting much higher than this. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is also going to be high tier 5. I wonder if I should, yeah, I think I should maybe split the tiers. Because I think, yeah. Okay, I'm adding another tier, which is going to be tier 6. Make this one blue. Or no, I'll make this one blue. Jeez. Okay, tier 7, gonna be blue. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I'll make this one. Okay. So, I'll end up moving, I think I'll move Simmons and down to the next tier. No, McCollum can stay. Yeah, everybody else, though, can move down a tier. Maybe Aiden. Yeah, Aiden can stay there. Yeah, I think everybody in that tier is ahead of tier 6 by a fair margin. But back to Shai, I think people that are saying that Thunder should trade Shai because he doesn't fit their timeline. Like Trey is 24. I mean, Shai is 24, or something like that. I mean, he's around the age of 24. He's a very good playmaker. I mean, he's an elite scorer. He's learning to be a good playmaker. Like, and Shai, like his athletic ability, and then the skill set that he has as a scorer, like he's going to be a superstar at some point. It'd be idiotic for the Thunder to trade him for picks. Just 100% hold on to him. He's in tier 5. Pascal Siakam. See, this is why we have tier 5, tier 6, because Pascal is definitely more on the tier of those guys than the guys in tier 6. Pascal's definitely become underrated. Where he's a very good off-ball offensive player, very good defender. I mean, his creation on offense, like with the ball in his hands, he's not the best, like as a primary ball handler. But that's not, I don't know if that's really what you want Siakam to do. And I think he was kind of forced into that role a little bit this year. And to no surprise, he wasn't great, but he's definitely more in the tier of these tier 5 guys than tier 6 guys. But here, let me see. Is there anybody that should move down from tier 5? Or anybody from tier 6 that should move up? Because I don't... Yeah, Ben Simmons can move up. Yeah, can Simmons move up? Oh, I'll keep Simmons down there. Yeah. And then I think I'll move DeAndre Ayton down also, but he'll be the best player in tier 6. Okay, Marcus Smart. I may be higher on Marcus Smart here, but I think Marcus Smart is a low tier 6 guy. I think he's better than everybody in tier 7. Smart has definitely become underrated because his offense isn't great. Like as a shooter, he's not very good. He's not a creator with the ball in his hands, but on defense, I think he's the best guard defender in the NBA. Like he's just a pest. He's better than Jrue Holiday, I think, at being a pest on defense. So strong, so laterally quick. He can guard any offensive player. Ben Simmons is probably better on ball, but off the ball, Marcus Smart is definitely a better defender. Stepping in to contest shots, take charges, jumping into lanes on steals and stuff. Marcus Smart. I'll slot him in there at tier 6. Steph Curry, obviously tier 1. Put him as the best player in the NBA, and there's nobody down here that's gonna change that. Curry, I mean, like you can't overstate what he did this year. Like on defense, first of all, because I'll start kind of with his one weakness. Like defense, he's a slight plus, I think, because he's on the smaller side, which doesn't help him on defense, and he can't exert the same energy that maybe some other guys can because he's carrying such a heavy offensive load. But he's still very aware on defense, able to like jump into passing lanes and stuff. So I think he's a solid plus maybe on defense. But as a scorer, Curry's like he's the best shooter we've ever seen, and then he's one of the best ball handlers we've ever seen. He's one of the best off-ball players we've ever seen. So how do you stop him? I mean, like if you're a defender, like you have to put two people on him, because if you're guarding him, he's gonna break your ankles with his dribbling moves, and if he breaks your ankles and gets an open shot, he's gonna make the shot. So I mean, he's a guaranteed 3 points like, every time he touches the ball, if he's not doubled. And then off the ball, he's even harder to guard because he's the greatest off-ball player of all time, in my opinion. Just like running around screens, setting up defenders, and then running the other way. He's such a good defender. I mean, off-ball player. Sorry. Uh, like so, I think that's what makes Curry the best player in the NBA. And then his playmaking is good also because not only is he a good passer, but his scoring slash shooting gravity is elite because you can't even think of leaving him alone. And off ball, like he's the only player that I would consider doubling off ball because number one, he's so hard to cover off ball. He's going to get open if he's just one on one, and then number two, if he does get open, he's going to make the three. And so people discredit him for not making the playoffs last year on a terrible Warriors team, who without him it would have been one of the worst teams of all time. It was a terrible team, but with Curry, they were a very good team. You know, that run that he went through, like, I remember, I think it started, I can't remember when it started, but it went through, like, basically the end of the season. It started in, like, right after the All-Star break or something where, I mean, he went off for, like, 50 against the Mavericks or something, and then he had, like, the 60-point game against the Celtics, and, like, the crazy game against the 76ers. He had so many memorable games last year, like the comeback against the Lakers that they had, comeback against the Clippers that they had, the game against the Heat where he hit the game winner or the game sealer over Bam Adebayo. I think the like back-to-back couple games against the Mavericks, like the game against the Trailblazers where he went off for like 60 after Damian Lillard said he couldn't handle being on a not stacked team. So, I mean, Curry, that's a long way of saying Steph Curry is the best player in the NBA, and I don't think that's going to change this year. I think he's going to continue to be that, and the Warriors are going to be really good if they can stay healthy. And I mean, even if they did stay healthy, other than Curry, and like Curry was out the whole year, but everyone else stayed healthy, they wouldn't even have a prayer, I think, of being a playoff team. That's how good Steph Curry is. I mean, they're in the conversation like the team that the Warriors have with Klay Thompson coming off of an injury, an old Draymond Green, and then like the rest of the guys on the team being like Andrew Wiggins, Jonathan Kuminga, who's a very raw prospect, Moses Moody, like Jordan Poole, and that team I think had better NBA Finals odds than the Milwaukee Bucks this year. That's why Steph Curry is the best player in the NBA. Okay, so that was a long rant on Curry, but Jason Tatum, I think, is the 12th best player in the NBA. He's in tier 3. He's an elite defender, especially off ball. He's long, able to get into passing lanes. And then on offense, he's a very good playmaker. And then as a scorer, I mean, I think Tatum is one of those guys that, like Kevin Durant, like, kind of, I mean, like, I'm not comparing him to Michael Jordan, but like Michael Jordan used to have, like, when he gets into his mindset and when he gets his eyes, I don't know how to describe it, but when he gets hot, he does not miss shots. Like we've seen it multiple times over the past couple of years where he's gotten off to slow starts, but then later in the season, like against the Warriors this year, against the Wizards in the play-in game, against the Nets in the playoffs. Against, I know that there's another, like against the Clippers last year. I think he did it against the Lakers last year, but he just gets into these zones where it's like it doesn't matter if he's triple covered, guys draped all over him, he's still going to hit shots. And he's a good shot creator anyway, so he doesn't have to hit all these contested shots all the time. But he's great at doing that, and I think he's kind of Paul George on offense to some extent. Maybe even better than Paul George, especially as a scorer, and he's better than Paul George on defense. So he's just kind of a better Paul George. I think Tatum at some point, there's going to be an argument for him or Luka Doncic as the best player in the world. I guess Giannis is probably going to be in that argument too. But yeah, so the NBA is in good hands. It's going to be fun to watch. Tobias Harris is probably he's probably the best guy in tier 6. You know what? I don't know if I should move McCollum. I feel like him and Tobias Harris are kind of similar, but Harris is just a good scorer and a tall scorer. So, I mean, he's a skilled shooter, tall shooter, kind of, once again, a starving man's Chris Middleton. He's the best player probably in tier 6. Karl Anthony Towns is in tier 3 right now, and that's very tough to say because he's either at the very top of tier 4 or the very end of tier 3. I'd say he's the very end of tier 3 because defensively he's a minus, but he's not a huge minus. He's a big minus, but he's not a huge minus. He's an elite playmaker because of 1, his passing, just like Curry, and 2, his gravity, which I said, like, you know, Curry, like him pulling Rudy Gobert out because of his ability to shoot the 3 is more valuable, like pulling Rudy Gobert out of the paint is more valuable than like Steph Curry pulling like Patrick Beverley out to try and guard him like way behind the 3-point line. Because Rudy Gobert is like, you know, he has way more value because he's trying to deter your shots at the rim, which are the easiest shots. And it's a lot harder to make those shots if there's a rim protector. So you got that. Cat's the best 3-point shooting big man of all time, if I didn't mention. You know, he's an elite shooter, basically off anything. He's a very good off-ball player. I mean, he runs around screens like a guard, which I don't know if there's another big man in the NBA who does that. And then as a scorer, basically in any facet, like he's so versatile as a scorer. And yeah, any situation that you put him into, he's going to have success as a scorer. I think he's an elite offensive big man, arguably the best offensive big man in the NBA behind Nikola Jokic. I think he's on offense, you know, strictly offense, he's probably better than Embiid. And I think the arguments between him and Bam are dumb because the gap between Cat's offense and Bam's offense is way bigger than the gap between Bam's defense and Cat's defense. So Cat's going into tier 3 once again. Timberwolves potentially playoff bound. We'll see. Okay. So we're nearing the end of this video. We're an hour and 8 minutes in. Wow. Okay. Nikola Vucevic, tier 5. Actually, I'll move Ayton up into tier 5. But yeah, so Nikola Vucevic, tier 5. I saw on Twitter yesterday, which I think was a very good point. A lot of his value has dropped off since he became, because he's not a good defender. And since he went from being a traditional center to just being a 3-point shooter, like all of his value has basically dropped because Bobby Portis can do that for you as a 3-point shooter. And that's part of the reason that I think the Bulls are a bit overrated this year. I think people are overrating the impact that Nikola Vucevic has because if they're just going to put him in the corner, say, or like try and pick and pop all day with Nikola Vucevic, where's the value in that? Like at that point, because if he's only doing that and he's a minus on defense, he's not like a top 10 center anymore. Because then he's just Bobby Portis, but with worse defense. He's just a shooter who, I mean, you can get that anywhere. So I think for him to maximize his value, to go back to, being a post big man, a traditional big man, like pick and roll. I mean, he can still shoot the threes, but he has to do it a little bit less, I think, this year. And he has to go back to having a more well-rounded game instead of just being a three-point specialist because he doesn't really bring much value there. Okay, John Wall, tier 7. I don't even know if he should start for the Rockets this year. I think who'd they draft this year? So they drafted Josh Christopher, Jalen Green, Alperen Sengun, and Usman Garuba. So, and then they have Kevin Porter Jr. So I'm not even sure if he should start this year. I think they should probably start, especially since it should be a development year for the Rockets. They should start Porter Jr., Jalen Green, Jae'Sean Tate, Usman Garuba, or no, Christian Wood and Usman Garuba, and then have Sengun come off the bench. But John Wall, I mean, back to John Wall, he's fallen off a cliff since his Wizards days. He's just not really the same player. Russell Westbrook, a very controversial player, I think is in tier 5. I don't know if that's his ranking in tier 5, but Westbrook, he's not a good fit on the Lakers, but still, like, the reason I think he's not a good fit on the Lakers is not just because he's not a good spacer. He's also not a very good defender, and he's not a great off-ball player, which the Lakers, like what Westbrook is he's a primary ball handler who can score pretty well, and his best attribute is his playmaking. And to do that well, he has to have the ball in his hands a lot of the time. And so Westbrook's role on the Lakers, I think, should probably be him coming off the bench and leading the bench unit. But then, like what I'm saying is what you want to do with LeBron James, like when you're playing alongside LeBron James, you're usually playing off ball because he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot, rightfully so. And he's a great playmaker, so you need to be like running around off ball, getting yourself open so he can hit you and you can score. Or you either need to be doing that or you need to be just a good shooter and be standing out on the three-point line so LeBron can hit you for that. Or you need to be a good defender, like Alex Caruso was. Russell Westbrook's primary role is like as a primary ball handler, which you don't. If you're the Lakers, like you brought in Russell Westbrook for that, probably, but you don't want to. I don't think you want to take the like. LeBron's a good off-ball player, so if Westbrook has the ball in his hands a lot, that's fine, I guess, because LeBron's going to be able to, be running around off-ball, get open off of cuts and stuff, and get wide open dunks. But with Russell Westbrook, like, do you want to take the ball? I think, do you want to take the ball out of LeBron's hands and give the ball to Russell Westbrook? Because if you're the Lakers, I don't think that's what you want to do. I would definitely rather have the ball in LeBron's hands. And so, I mean, maybe you can say Westbrook can run the bench unit when LeBron isn't playing. But then also, especially in the playoffs, there's not going to be a lot of time when LeBron isn't playing. So, if you just brought in Westbrook to be a sixth man, I mean, I would have much rather, if I were the Lakers, brought in like Lou Williams or something to do that. I just don't understand the fit. Great, they're going to be a great team in fast breaks and stuff. But even forget about the shooting. Like, how is the Lakers offense going to work? Just because the paint's going to be clogged all the time. It's like, that's what you'd think. My video. Dang. What happened? Okay, my stream status is. Okay, my stream status is poor, so we're gonna speed this up. But yeah, so anyway, Westbrook, I don't understand the fit with the Lakers, but still Westbrook is a good, ball handler, playmaker. So just in a vacuum, Westbrook's a tier 5 player, but like as for his fit on the Lakers, it's not good. But we're not going to get into that because I think my stream's going to die on me here in a little bit. Christian Wood, tier 5 player. He's a very versatile player, like versatile defender, able to rim protect, able to switch on to guards. I really like Christian Wood, so it's killing me that I can't talk about him a ton here. Um, he's a great roller in the pick and roll. He can even at times create a shot for himself, but he's so athletic. He's a lob threat. He is a rim protector. Like he is a rim running big man with some skill which is kind of what Evan Mobley was. So that's why people didn't want them to take Evan Mobley. I think they should have taken Evan Mobley. But anyway, Wood's a great player. He's probably better than DeAndre Ayton. Probably better than Clint Capella. Like Christian Wood in the next couple of years, he's going to develop into, I think, an All-NBA type of player. That's how good he is. Okay, we got a couple good players here. Let's start with Trae Young. Young's probably at the top of tier 4, which actually makes me think I should move Cat down to the top of tier 4. Because I think he's kind of a similar player to Trae Young, even though I think Cat's a tad bit better. Young, as we know, he's probably the worst defender in the NBA, but that isn't the worst thing in the world because Young's, as a perimeter defender, you can kind of shield around that and, just have Young, like, guard. Like, in the playoff series last year, like, you can just have Trae Young guard, like, Danny Green or something on the perimeter. And, if you're a rim protector and you're a really bad defender, that's a bad thing because now teams are going to get, shots at the basket really easily. If you're a perimeter defender, though, it's not the worst thing in the world, especially when you're Trae Young and you're an elite scorer and probably a top 5 playmaker in the NBA. Like, in the pick and roll, you can't stop the guy because he has maybe the best floater game in the NBA, the best floater game I've seen in a long time because he has, like, a lightning quick release. He has a lightning quick release. He's so accurate. He's able to draw fouls at a great rate. And, really just, like, in the playoffs last year, when Trae Young wasn't hucking up, like, the 50-foot threes, like the Steph Curry threes, and he was, like, utilizing the pick and roll and trying to get to the basket, he was unstoppable. Like, the 76ers couldn't stop him. Nobody could stop him. So I think Trae Young, he's going to learn that, I can make these 35-foot Steph Curry threes, but it's so much more valuable to my team, and we score every time that I try to take the ball to the basket and either score for myself or get the ball to my teammates. So I think he's going to realize that, and he's going to, I would bet at some point Trae Young wins the MVP. He has the type of makeup to do that. Yeah, he's the second best player in tier 4, better than like Chris Paul, Rudy Gobert. We got Zach LaVine here. I think he's a tier below the guys in tier 4, but he's in tier 5, even though I'll put Vucevic down here. Sorry, Vucevic, but he's not the same tier of player that Zach LaVine is. But LaVine, I think, he's not a good defender again, but he's a solid playmaker, very good scorer, very athletic, and now he's got the shooting ability. So he's very hard to stop as a scorer. We'll see. I think he can definitely get onto that level that like Bradley Beal is on. But I just don't think he's the same tier of player that like Trae Young is. So I think he can get on to tier 4, but at this point, I don't think he's there. Zion Williamson, okay. Let's put Zion. I think let's say Zion's the best player in tier 4 because right now he's still not, he's not much on defense, but as a scorer, this was basically his rookie year, and he was more, I believe he scored more while being more efficient than Michael Jordan did for his career, which is absolute insanity. I mean, like, that was his rookie year. Like, Zion, like without any polish as a scorer, just purely basically off athleticism last year, Zion averaged like 20, it was like 27 points on ridiculous efficiency, like Kawhi in the playoffs type efficiency, because all he does is he barrels to the basket because he's stronger than probably anybody in the NBA, and he can jump higher. Like his second jump, he's so good at jumping high and then landing and then immediately getting back up, which nobody else in the NBA can do. But like he can jump higher than almost anybody in the NBA. He's stronger than anybody in the NBA. So he just barrels his way to the basket and then he jumps higher than everybody else and dunks the ball or just like makes a lay-in. And he's already one of the best finishers of all time. You can't say enough about Zion, and that ridiculous scoring gives him the ability to be a great playmaker because everybody is just in the paint waiting for him the way that they are for Giannis. Although Zion right now as a scorer may already be better than peak Giannis or maybe this year's Giannis as a scorer. He's probably a top 5 scorer in the NBA. In fact, I would say he definitely is. So everybody's just in the paint waiting for him. Last year, though, when he kicked the ball out, he kicked it out to like Eric Bledsoe, who'd brick the 3 immediately. I don't know. Obviously the Pelicans had to try and fix some stuff around him. I don't know if that'll be completely fixed this year. But Zion, I could see him being all the way up in Tier 1 after next year because his potential is sky high based on already how ridiculously good he is while being totally unpolished as a player. Okay, we got 2 players left. Draymond Green is also in Tier 4. Yeah, Draymond's also in Tier 4 because at least in the playoffs, he's a top 3 defender in the NBA. In the regular season, he's a top 4 defender in the NBA behind Gobert, Antetokounmpo, Anthony Davis. In the playoffs, he jumps Rudy Gobert. He's just on defense, like he probably has the best defensive IQ of all time. And this isn't even peak Draymond on defense, like his athleticism isn't where it once was. But we saw in the play-in game against the Lakers and Anthony Davis, Anthony Davis was locked down by Draymond, and that was a sight to see because that doesn't usually happen. Anthony Davis getting locked down, and Draymond's more of a team defender than even an individual defender. So that was something amazing. On offense, Draymond isn't great. He's not a good scorer in the slightest. He's a terrible shooter, but he is solid in the pick and roll. And when Curry finds him in the pick and roll, in that short roll, he's able to always make the correct pass to cutters. And so I think that's very valuable. So Draymond, I think he's an amazing ceiling raiser. On a championship team, he's probably one of the top 15, 20 guys I'd want on a team. On a lottery team, though, probably one of the, on a lottery team, on the Pistons this year, it'd probably be more valuable to replace Cade Cunningham with Kemba Walker than it would be to replace Cade Cunningham with Draymond Green. He's not a great floor raiser, but he's definitely an elite ceiling raiser. And ceiling raising, the goal is to win a championship. So obviously it's more valuable. Okay, we are on to our last player, Klay Thompson, who I will put into Tier 5. Okay, Klay, by the way, I'll reiterate, these tiers are not, other than tiers, I'll say tiers 1, 2, and 3, the players are ranked. In the other tiers, they're not. But yeah, so Klay, where is Klay? Yeah, he's in Tier 5. He's a great shooter, and he's a good defender, so he's a great 3-and-D player. Other than that, he's not much, and he is coming off of 2 pretty serious injuries. So I have my doubts about Klay Thompson, but he's better than, Andrew Wiggins, who they were starting last year, or Kent Bazemore. So you got that. He'll be in tier 5. But anyway, that is it for my NBA Superstars tier rankings. Hope you all enjoyed the live stream. I'll potentially be doing another tier maker again this week, like NFL quarterbacks maybe, um, NBA teams, NFL teams. We could potentially be doing like college football players, college football teams. We'll see. But yeah, probably at a more convenient time because the stream didn't do great, but um, it did better than the last one. But yeah, we'll do it at a more convenient time next time. But once again, until next time, I'm Bucky Badger W saying have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the video. Watch my last video. It's a banger.